want to introduce actually a good friend of mine. I've known Ed Marx for quite a few years now. He's been a mentor and a friend to me through the years. For those of you who don't know Ed, he's the Executive Vice President at the Advisory Board, Clinovations, but really what he is a CIO at the New York City Health and Hospitals. And you can imagine, that huge organization. I don't even know how many hospitals are associated with that organization, but it's a public organization, brings challenges, implementing Epic, multi-billion-dollar implementation. Ed's leading that charge there. Before that, he was at Texas Health Resources as the CIO. He also was the governor-appointed chairman of the Texas Health Services Authority, providing leadership over the health information exchange for the state of Texas. He's served in that role since 2010, and concurrent with that, he served 15 years in the Army Reserve, first as a combat medic and as a combat engineer officer. So, Ed, thank you for your service. He's had an amazing career, and he's going to talk a little bit about his life. And I think, when we think about innovation, the first thing that comes to mind is Ed, because he's been all about innovation in his career throughout the years. So without further ado, I am going to bring Ed up.
Thank you. Wow, I am really excited, and hopefully I won't fall off the edge here. Really excited and honored and humbled to be with you today and to share with you a little bit of what I've learned along my journey that has helped me in my career. And not only my career, but what's great is a lot of things we'll talk about this morning help you in your personal life as well. So that to me, I always love when I can learn something and apply it to both my professional and personal life, because I think those lines have really blurred in a good way. It can be in a good way over the years in our generation. And so I'm really excited to share with you. And I'm so jealous of your chapter and just how strong it is. And you have some of the giants of healthcare IT in your midst in terms of the California region and Southern California with Chuck and Scott and Darren and other Sri and others. It's just amazing how rich you all are with the type of leadership that you have. And those are people I learn from as well. So it's just amazing. So what I want to do is share with you a little bit about my journey. And it's not about what I've accomplished. That's not the goal, because everything I'm going to talk about required a team of people. So it's not about Ed, but it is about my stories and my journey to bring out the real-life examples of the principles I'm going to talk about. So oftentimes I would speak, and people would say, Ed, you have such great stories. Would you write a book? Would you put it in a book format? And that takes a lot of effort for those of you who have written before. So I was contacted by a publisher a couple years ago, and it took a few months of writing and working with collaborators. And ultimately, the book was released, and the first edition sold out, and the second edition was just released about a month ago. And again, I want to share with you these principles that have worked in my life that you'll relate to because they're working in your life as well. And not all the principles fit everyone. Everyone has different value systems and some different principles by which you live by, but I think you'll find some common ones. And if I can leave you with 2 or 3 things today, so 2 or 3 principles that you already know, but that you would know them in a deeper level, I can guarantee you that it will transform your life, both on a personal and professional level. And I'm not a motivational speaker or anything like that. I'm going to share with you from my heart as one of you. I am the most average person that you've ever known, but I was able to experience extraordinary things because of living these principles. And so that's what I'm here to share, and that's my hope for you this morning. So we'll see if I can operate the technology. So far, so good. So first, a little bit about myself. That's my family. That's 4 of my 5 children. That photo was taken on Sunday, and so I wanted to make sure you had the latest and greatest. That's my family. and they're the most important thing to me, so that's why I share with you. But I want to share with you who I am as we go into this. So I'm 4 things. So I'm a simple person, so I have to have them all start with the same letter so I can remember them. And so you can see them there, but I'm all about serving. So I believe I serve the city of New York. I serve the millions and millions of residents of what could be the greatest city in the world. That's who I serve. I serve my family. I serve those who serve with me in New York City at health and hospitals. And from a faith perspective, I serve my God. And so I'm also about sharing. So that's why I'm here today. I believe in sharing. I believe that's the way you grow, is the more you share, the more transparent you are, the more you actually grow. And then I'm also about studying. I'm continuously learning and learning from others, learning from my peers, learning from other industries. And then finally, I'm about shaping others, shaping myself, shaping my family. So I'm about 4 things. Now, you can tell that some of my kids are now taller than I am, and they're like, Dad, you need to add a 5th S, which is short. So, but I refuse. So I want to share with you sort of humble beginnings, because again, my whole premise as I lay out some of these stories and principles to you is that if this can happen to me, it can happen to you, because I am, again, and I will prove it to you, as average as you can get. So I had very humble beginnings. I was born and raised in Bavaria, so southern Germany, and this is what we dress like. So this is my brothers and sisters. So I'm the youngest one. Now, about a year ago, it finally dawned on us at a family reunion. We're like, Dad, why did you take a picture of us under a sign that says, danger, falling rock? He says, well, I meant to tell you, you used to have 8 brothers and sisters, but no. But, so this was really cute and stuff, and we did have kind of a cool upbringing in Bavaria, but when we came to the United States, my parents didn't know any better, and that's how they dressed us. And so for 2 years, and I was I was 10 years old, so I was like 4th grade, but my brothers and sisters, they were like in high school, and they had to dress like that. And it is funny to think about it now, but I can tell you that the experience of going through that really shaped my character and taught me a lot of very valuable lessons. So what I'm trying to share with you, I had no advantage. We were not rich. In fact, we were poor. We were on food stamps. And what I neglected to tell you, the reason I was born and raised in Germany, because my parents are German, and my dad is a Holocaust survivor. He's one of the few remaining survivors who actually escaped a concentration camp. So he was the only family member who escaped. The rest of my family, on my father's side, all died in Dachau. So my dad is so very humble beginnings. My mom grew up near an ammunition plant, and so her dad was conscripted in the Nazi army, died in the war, and she didn't have a regular life. She was bombed every day by the Allied forces because they were trying to get to this munitions plant. So very humble beginnings, what I'm trying to tell you. So the advantage, though, of growing up in Germany when we came in the mid-'70s was we were really good at soccer. We were really good at soccer, and the academics were a little bit better in the United States, so we were smarter than our peers, and we were a better soccer player, and soccer was just now, getting going in the United States. So we had a couple of advantages, but instead of applying myself, like my older brothers and sisters, they were like valedictorians and things like that, and went off to Ivy League schools, I goofed off, and I just had fun, and I was like the class clown. And so I had a very troubled youth. I was arrested twice before I was 16 years old. I flunked. I was flunking out of school. I was even flunking. I took German. I was flunking German. I was doing bad. Yeah. So even though I was this bad, person, I still got accepted to a state school. I don't think you could do it today, but I had like a 2.0 GPA. But I got accepted conditionally to Colorado State University. But my troubles continued. So I just started partying all the time, and I was drinking. I was flunking school. And again, I was taking some easy classes. Again, I took German, got a D. I took creative writing, got an F. I had a 1.6 GPA. And again, I just tell you this because I didn't have, anything special in my life to allow me to have the experiences that I have had. So I'm telling you, if these things that I'm going to share with you happen to me, they can happen to anyone. I was joining the Army Reserve, as Chuck mentioned, and I would have been kicked out of basic training, except by the time they got to me, so we had to wait in line. We were getting out processed. I was just terrible. And I think the captain had to go home. It's like 8 o'clock at night. He probably had to go home and take care of some stuff. So I was the last person there, and they're like, "Oh, we'll get him later," and they never got me. And so I made it through basic training, despite all that, I had my first job and I was fired. I was fired in my first job out of college. And yeah, the Donald Trump thing, that was before he was president-elect. And there's the alcohol. So again, the whole premise is I had no silver spoon. I had no advantages growing up. I worked my way through college or flunked my way through college, did everything on my own. But despite all that, there's these just extraordinary tales, and each one, is a story in and of itself. But I'm not going to try and bore you too much, but I just want to give you a sense that it's just amazing things, that can happen when you live a principled life. So average in every way. So one of my daughters, my oldest daughter, she does a lot of my PowerPoints for me. So I'll say, hey, her name's Tally. I said, Tally, can you help me? I've got this presentation. Here's my outline. And then she'll go find pictures. So one time I said, I need something about magic, and there's no magic. And so she dressed up. This is my oldest daughter. She dressed up and basically to make the point that there's no magical formula for what I'm sharing with you. There's no fairy dust. There's nothing special in and of itself, but it's just these basic principles. And here's my challenge to you. You're going to hear these principles, and you're going to say, oh, really? Oh, someone came and talked to us about risk? But what I'm going to push you on is that take it to the deep level. So I'm going to talk about things that you already know. I know you know them. You could speak to them as well as I could. But I'm going to push you to take it to the real deep level, because it's not until that you live these core principles deeply that change and transformation happens or innovation happens. So let's just start with the first one. So the first one is risk boldly and often. So if I ask for a show of hands, how many people take risk? I would guarantee you that 80% of you would raise your hand and say, I take risk. Then I would ask you, have you ever been fired? And probably just maybe at 1 or 2% would admit to having been fired because they took a risk about something. If I say, how many of you have been hurt deep, because you've taken a risk, but you still take calculated risk today, again, the percentages will be really small. So everyone says, yeah, I take risks, but I really challenge you about how deep you take risks. So what I did, I was 35 years old, and I was late into healthcare IT. I knew my calling at an early age was healthcare. I did not know how it would manifest itself. But when I was, it didn't start till I was in my late 20s that it actually all came together. So I was 35 years old. I had 6 years of experience in healthcare IT. And I worked at University Hospital Health System in Cleveland, Ohio, and the IT department there was the worst. They used to do internal ratings, and they were rated lower than the mailbox, the mail room, mail service. I mean, it was a terrible reputation. I wasn't hired into IT, but I was hired into a startup that was like their big faculty practice, and I was the main IT person. And sure enough, 2 months after I get there, there's a merger, and I'm now part of IT, and I'm embarrassed. I'm frankly embarrassed because, they were so bad. And so we get a new CEO, and the CEO came from here. He came from Cedars-Sinai. He was the COO at Cedars. He shows up in Cleveland, and the first thing he does is fire the CIO, because that's how bad we were. So he fires the CIO, and then they start a recruitment process to bring in the CIO to help turn around the health system. And so my job was to sort of welcome the candidates as they came through and tell them who they're going to meet and just kind of help them with their day and understand the different players. And so as I was watching them, I was like, yeah, I don't have their experience, because it was a prototypical candidate. I don't believe in what I'm about to tell you, but this is the way it works, right? There's a certain candidate profile, and they're like, we need someone with 30 years of experience or 20 years of experience, and so they're going to be somewhere between 50 and 60 years old, and so sure enough, these very great candidates came in. They had all the experience, but I looked at them. I said, man, I don't have that experience, but I've got a lot of these other things, and I think I could do it. I said, it's pretty, boy, the term I always want to use is like, not politically correct, but I'm going to say it anyways, kind of ballsy. It's like, wow, can I do that? And so I took a risk. And I went to the CEO, and if you know Tom Zenti, he's 6.5 feet tall, and I don't appreciate this style of leadership, but he's a good friend of mine, and he was one of my official mentors, but he kind of stares you down and intimidates you. But I was like, you know what, I'm going to take a risk, because this is my chance. That's my point here, is take deep risk, take a chance. And so I went to him, and I said, Mr. Zenti, you can stop the search. He's like, what are you talking about, Marx? I said, you can stop the search. I found the candidate. I know who the person is. And then he's just stared at me because he's waiting for me to sweat. Those type of leaders, they just stare you down. So I just stared back at him. I was like praying, and I was sweating inside, but not on the outside. And he said, okay, so I'll give you 6 months. If you ask him today, he'll tell you, he said the only reason I gave Marx that chance, because he had some purple shirt and green suit, or he was making fun of how I dressed. And he said, the only reason I gave him a chance because he had the moxie, is maybe a better word, the moxie to ask. And anyone who would have that sort of moxie, I'm going to give it an opportunity. So the next day, I came with a new org chart. I said, hey, here's my 100-day plan. And I came up with a new organization chart, and I eliminated my position, my former position. He says, Marx, what are you doing that for? And I said, I believe in this so much, and this risk, that I'm not going back. So it's like the Vikings. Supposedly, when the Vikings took over territory, they would land on these islands or these countries. They'd burn their ships so no one could return, and they would go all in. I said, I'm all in, Tom. And then sure enough, things worked out. I hired a great team, and we did remarkable things in turning around that health system. To the point that one of the greatest compliments I've ever had in my career happened in January when I got a call from Tom. This is, 12 years ago. And he's like, Ed, would you come back and be our CIO again? We miss you. They had 3 CIOs while I was gone, and they said, we miss you. Now, I didn't want to go back to Cleveland, and I said, wow, I'm honored, but I can't make that move. But do you see what I'm saying? It's like you have to take a deep, deep risk if you want to see anything like that. So my career just went from being a director to a CIO of a major health system in an instance because of taking risk. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about deep things. I think about, I'm gonna move on. I've got so many stories, but it'll take a while to fill it out. But I think you get it. Is you got to take risk and deep risks. So just challenge yourself. Am I taking risks in my life? Am I taking deep risks? I have the most beautiful wife. I have an amazing wife, and she was like way out of my league when I saw her. And it's like, there's no way that Marx is going to get that person who's so smart and articulate and beautiful and all of the things that I ever dreamed about. But I took a risk, and we're married, so it worked. And I'm glad I took that risk. So you have to take risks. So seek and chase vision. And again, if I were to ask you, who amongst you has vision or a vision for your life or career, you would say, yeah, I do. But if I were to say, okay, tell me exactly what it is, you might have a hard time articulating it. And it's probably not something you have written down. So that's the case with most people. If I said, do you have it written down? The answer would probably be no. And so, again, I want to push you a little bit deeper. So write down your vision. Take the time to write down your vision. This is really important. If you want to have success in your personal or professional life or innovation or what have you, you got to have vision. And so this is so important. So I was teaching my then 8-year-old, so my oldest daughter, who you saw her picture, she was about 8 years old. I was trying to teach her the concept of vision because it's so important. Because what I would do is take my family on strategic planning retreats, just like we do at work. Because why do we spend all that time and energy at work developing vision and mission statements and plans? And we see usually there's statistics that show that companies that do have well thought out plans and live their vision outperform in the marketplace sometimes by 10 to 1, those who don't. So I was like, why don't we apply that same formula to our families? Why don't we take retreats with our families and talk about who we are, what our values are, our vision and mission, and our strategies and objectives, and why don't we measure them on a regular basis? And so that's what we do. We've done it for many, many years. So anyways, my daughter is trying to teach her vision, and you've all heard the story about Michelangelo building the Sistine Chapel. I don't know if it's true or not, but the story goes that he's walking by when it was under construction, and he asks this person, hey, what are you doing? He goes, I'm just a mason. And the second person, he said, what are you doing? He's like, hey, I'm building a wall. And the third person he asked, what are you doing? And he says, I'm building the Sistine Chapel. So that third person really got the vision. Even though their job was as a mason, they knew what their role was. So I was teaching my daughter that. And I thought, 8 years old, she's getting it. And so we stopped. We were on a hike, and she started grabbing a bunch of rocks. And she was very deliberate. She got some small ones, some big ones, some different colored ones, and she was putting them in a very deliberate arrangement by her feet. And so she goes, Daddy, what is this? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a big test. She's obviously built something she's envisioned, and I have no idea what it is. And so if I get this wrong, I'm going to crush her. I'm going to be a failure as a dad. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what it is. So I thought about Disney. She was really into Disney princesses at the time. And I was like, that's Cinderella's castle. And she goes, no, Daddy, that's just a pile of rocks. But my kids then adopted the same approach. And I saw my son one time. My son was Volunteer of the Year at the health system in Cleveland that I worked at when he was about 16 years old. And when he got up to do a presentation one time, the first thing he showed is his mission and vision. And all my kids are very, very successful. And I believe that one of the main reasons is because of vision. And when I go back to my career and my team's effectiveness, it's because we lived vision and talked about vision and had purpose in our planning. So if you don't go after it, you'll just wander aimlessly. And we see that in a lot of people's lives, both personally and professionally. There's just wandering because they don't have that vision or the discipline of vision. So that's why that's so important. So you have to believe in something bigger than yourself. So that's the third one. So it's different for everyone. I'm not here to preach, so it's different for everyone. For me, it's definitely grounded in my faith. But let me just tell you a story how this stuff works. So one of the things we started doing was climbing mountains. So the vision for the health system I worked at in Texas was Transformation Mountain. So we are on a 10-year journey to climb this mountain. And we had base camps every 3 years to kind of check in on progress. And so we started doing silly things, like we had green screens, and we would be forced to stand in front of a green screen, put on a parka, they'd be dropping fake snow, and we as the leaders of the health system be like, look, we're on base camp 2, and we're learning. And I was like, that is so hokey. I said, we can't do that. How many of you have actually climbed a mountain? That's what I asked the 100 officers of the company, and nobody ever had climbed a mountain, like a technical mountain. And so I said, let's start climbing. So we started climbing. So every time we climb, part of our vision is to do something great for that country. So we climbed the highest peaks on every continent. So this is in Africa. So we were thinking about, okay, what do we do in Africa? So we're in Tanzania, where Mount Kilimanjaro is. So that's the highest peak in Africa. And so we're trying to think, okay, what can we do for that community? Well, we learned that there's a Maasai village of 10,000 that's never had health care ever. It's very, very remote. Never had health care. So I said to my peers, we're all going to kick in money like we always do, extra money. It's peanuts to us, but it's gold to them. And I said, let's kick in extra money. Let's do a school, because they probably need help with schooling. And we had some contacts there to figure out what they really needed. And one of the doctors next to me, so I climbed now my climbing group had grown to about 20. And one of the doctors next to me, this is about 9 months before we went there, she hits me on the shoulder, and she's like, Ed, most of us here are physicians. Why don't we do a medical clinic? And I was like, I had a Homer Simpson moment. Of course, we're going to do a medical clinic. And so we all put together some funds, and we climbed the mountain. We came back down, and we opened the Open Arms Clinic. So the clinic still runs today. It has a full-time African physician and African nurse. That was very important to me, that it would be their own culture and their own people who staffed it. So what happened is a big opening ceremony. The president of the country was there. The media from all around Africa was there. And we had hundreds and hundreds of people that came to see the opening. Well, the very first patient we had was a mom who hadn't felt her baby in 2 days. Now, remember, we're there to do primary care. We don't have surgical equipment or anything like that. We're just there to provide basic services, which would be life-changing for them. And so we're there, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, the first patient is going to die, or the baby's going to die, and this whole thing, we're going to get it's going to be bad. It's going to be terrible. They're not going to trust us. It's going to shut down. It's going to get ugly. It's going to get bad. And I just had no faith, no belief in anything bigger than myself. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And started freaking out a little bit. Now, it turns out so we had 5 physicians with us that were part of our climbing team. The first one that we gave the patient to is a OBGYN who's written books on difficult births. And so Dr. Scott Ransom, he was also the CEO of a medical school. And he took the patient, and he had the ability to work with his wife, who was also a physician. She's ENT. It's the first time they ever got to work together, but she was there to assist him and hold the mother's hand and try to figure out, how do we get this baby out and make sure there's positive outcome for everyone. And so there was, like I said, hundreds and hundreds of people, a lot of commotion. So all the rest of the men in my group, we did sort of like guard duty to keep the masses from trying to get into the clinic. And then the other ladies were helping on the clinical side of things, and as well as praying. And so they kept asking for other equipment. Talk about innovation, because we were trying to get this baby out. And all of a sudden there was silence, and everyone was quiet. And then they asked for the other doctor to come in. It just so happened that one of our 5 doctors was a neonatologist, who, if you don't know, neonatologists are experts in babies that aren't doing well. And so one thing led to another. 10 minutes later, silence. They get the baby out, and they resuscitate the baby, and the baby lives and is healthy. Usually I'll show you a picture of her. She's 5 years old now. And she lived, and she said, the mother said, "Ma'am, what is your name?" Well, through a translator, "What is your name?" to the woman who was holding her hand, Elizabeth Ransom. She said, "What's your name?" She said, "My name is Elizabeth." And she goes, "That's the name of my daughter, Elizabeth." And Elizabeth, the doctor, is the doctor who 9 months earlier tapped me on the shoulder saying, "Ed, why don't we do a medical clinic?" And, I just believe that wasn't by happenstance, that conversation happened 9 months prior. We were there building a clinic and saved the mother and baby. And there's more stories like that have come out there. But again, we thought we were there to climb a mountain, but it was much greater than that. We were there to do something much bigger. And so I'm always cognizant of that in everything that we do. And again, I could tell you story after story. It's just like that, where people's lives were saved or we touched people's lives that had nothing to do with our original intent, but things can happen when you take those risks, when you have that vision, when you do some bold things, you experience things like that. Again, both on the personal and professional side of life. So another thing is to build a team of life givers. We were talking last night that you could put people in two different camps if you wanted to. You could say there's people who are life givers and life takers. Life takers suck the life out of you. You know the people. They're not in this room, but they're in other rooms that you probably hang out with, and they take a lot of energy from you, and you don't get any energy back. And really, you need to be very disciplined in a deep way of removing life takers and hanging out with life givers. And so that's what I try to do in my personal and professional life. The reason we had all the success, we didn't talk about all the accolades, and I really don't want to talk about them, but if you Google it, you'll find a lot of accolades, and they happen because of amazing teams. So whether it's New York City or Texas Health or in Cleveland or wherever, it's always about this amazing team that came together to do some amazing things. And my team is full of life givers. If there was a life taker, I eliminated them. And that's what you need to be disciplined at doing in your life, is get rid of people who just suck life out but don't give you life, don't give you the energy, don't give you the affirmation that you need. Because when you take a look at your life and you could write it out and say yes or no, and if you have a bunch of people who are life takers, they're going to hold you back. And so that's a hard message for some people, but I really believe it, and I believe that's why I achieve the success that I have working with different teams, is because I've been very diligent. This is just a shot from one of my birthday parties, and people just would get up on the mantle of our fireplace and just breathe life into me. And life is hard. Work is hard. If I have time, I'll tell you a little bit about New York City. That place is tough. Working with the press, working with the mayor is different than where other people want to go, where the board wants to go, and dealing with all the unions. My IT staff is unionized. I could go on. And I would never make it if I didn't have people who believed in me and who affirmed me, because, again, life is hard, and on the personal side as well. Life is very hard. So to have a group of people to come together that continuously affirm you and build you up is just amazing, and I couldn't do anything that I do without that. But yet we allow people to suck life out of us. So I would just tell you to stop it. Take an inventory and fill yourself with the right type of people. And mentoring too. So I have a formal mentor. So if I said, how many of you had mentors? Everyone raised their hands. But if I said, really, like formal mentor, none of you would raise your hand. I'm talking a contractual relationship. I have a contractual mentor relationship every even year. And on odd years, I do the reverse for someone else. I've done this for over 20 years. I have people I call all the time. I'm on my way to talk with the first deputy mayor about something very controversial. I'm on the phone, literally, as I'm walking to that meeting, because in my flesh, I want to do one thing, but I know it's just not right. It doesn't feel right. So I call one of my friends, one of my CIO buddies, and it's like, hey, what would you do? I'm really struggling in this decision. And they help me, or one of my former mentors that I can call, and they help me. And so you have to have that. If you don't, I don't know how you do it. People say, oh, Ed, that was pretty smart. I'm like, yeah, but it wasn't me who thought about it. It was, I called my mentor. My mentor gave me that idea. And that's why I'm telling you, I'm so average in every way. But what has led me to above average results is having this group of life givers and mentors. So again, I challenge you. You say you have a mentor, and I would love to see your plan that you have in your agenda with your mentor. And then it goes well, with marrying well and all that kind of stuff in your family. So again, it crosses all boundaries. Embracing humility and service. So it's easy for a leader to not be humble and to be very arrogant and prideful. And so you always have to remind yourself that it's not about you, it's about the mission that you've been called to do. And so for me, again, in healthcare IT, how do we leverage technology to enable superior business and clinical outcomes? I know that's my calling. And so I know that in order to be effective, I have to be a humble leader. And so there's a lot of different ways that you do this. I just talk to my leaders all the time about this, like walk through the halls slowly. Walk through when I have to go to the bathroom, like if I am in an office, I have to go to the bathroom, that's a 30-minute ordeal. Because on the way there, people want to talk to you. And if you are about a servant leader and you're humble, you need to speak with your people because they're the ones who make things happen, not you. They're the ones that are actually doing the real work. And so I always challenge myself. It's like, okay, give yourself 30 minutes and talk to as many people as you can. And everyone has my cell phone. Anyone can call me, text me, go out and have coffee with them. I am accessible to everyone because I am there to serve them. So I flip the organizational chart upside down. It's the same with my family and my friends. And so you really have to embrace that concept. But typically as people go up in their careers, they become more arrogant and they seal themselves off from the people who do the real work. So you always have to remind yourself, that you shouldn't do that. So I had the situation once when I was in Texas where in about 3-year period, I had 5 employees die. And it was just tragic and it hurt so bad. Some was a healthy person who just died. Sometimes it was a fiery car wreck. One time it was cancer. There's different things. Life happens, right? But 5 times in 3 years. And there was a guy named Tom. And Tom died, and I went to his funeral. So this is what I'm talking about, humility. You go to everything. You're a leader. You support your people in everything. So I go to all the funerals. I go to all the weddings. It's not convenient. And Tom's timing, is never convenient, of course. And so, but I went to his funeral, and it was really sad. Some funerals aren't so sad because the person had a great life, and everyone loved them, and things were awesome, and they know they're going off to a better place. But this one was really, really sad. There was maybe 30 people there, and his kids were there, and everyone looked sad. And I listened to the ceremony, and a couple people came up and spoke, and it was still sad. And I don't normally do this, but when they said, "Is there anyone else that wants to say anything?" I was like, I have to say something. So I got up and again, I want to say it one more time. I tell you these stories not because about me, but I'm trying to really impress upon you what I'm talking about when I say humility and serving your people. And so I got up there and I said, did you know that Tom saves lives? Did you know that he saved lives? Because I talk about all the time at work that's our mantra, that's our vision. We save lives. We take technology and we enable superior clinical and business outcomes and save lives. And I show it with data. That's another topic, but I can prove it with data. And I said, Tom, here's the cool thing about your dad. So I looked at his kids. I said, here's the really cool thing about your dad. So we talk about this a lot at work. We save lives because the stuff that we do actually helps clinicians deliver care, and we save lives, and we do some innovative things to make that happen. And I said, but here's the cool thing about your dad. Your dad continues to save lives right now. And I said, knowing technology and where we're headed, he's still saving lives for another 10 years because you think your dad's a programmer. You think your dad's a computer programmer, but he's not. He's like part of this clinical care team, and he's written these programs. He's coded things that are still used right now, and they'll be used 10 years from now. So your dad's code lives on, and your dad's saving lives all the time. And so in our foyer, so when you would come to visit us at Texas Health, when the elevator doors open, the first thing you would see, so what happens, I said, how many people have died? So, I knew 5 people in 3 years, but since Texas Health came together, because we're a fairly new company, and they've only been together about 15 years, I said, how many people have died? It was about 10. So with their family's permission, we got their photos, and so when you come into the lobby, every 10 seconds, there's a screen flip, and it has one of them featured and a little bit about them. And then there's a candle that's always lit. So the first thing we see and the last thing we see when we leave is we always honor those who we served with who are no longer with us. So one day we had hired this hotshot network engineer, and my network manager and director are always bragging about how we got the best person in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. And so I said, well, I want to meet him. I always try to meet all the new employees. So it took about 6 months, but I finally met him. And I said, hey, I understand that you were really well known in the marketplace, and this is your first time in healthcare, and we don't pay as well as some of the other places, so why did you choose us? We're always trying to learn how to get better and how to recruit better. Why did you choose us? He said it was easy. He said, when I went to the interview and the elevator's doors open, I saw my dad. So his dad we didn't know that. His dad had worked for us like 10 years ago. And he said, any place that honors my father, 10 years after his death, is a place I want to serve. So I share that story with you again to bring it back to humility and transparency. And you're there to serve your people, and you can have amazing things. You think that guy is like a super engaged employee and like really makes things whiz on our network? He does. So another one is passion. Have you ever worked with passionless people? They're boring. I hate passionless people. I don't hate people. I should rephrase that. I don't like to hang out with them as much as I do passionate people. So I love passion. So I don't care what your passion is. It could be like I like to climb mountains and do all sorts of things, but in dance. So I like to do Argentine tango, and this is dancing in water fountains when it's warm in Texas. But whatever it is, it could be weaving or knitting. Like my mom was a great knitter. And whatever the passion is, you got to have passion, because passion brings energy. And it also impacts not obviously your personal life, but your professional life. So I try and hire people with passion. I don't care about technical skills and if you've been in the business for 10 years or 20 years. I find someone with passion. I've hired people at the Hard Rock in Orlando at the gift shop because that person was passionate about selling me this cap. And we hired him. I saw this passionate guy. I went to Kosovo. One time the military said, hey, Ed, would you go to Kosovo during Christmas and do some stuff with the troops? I said, yeah, of course. Oh, wow. I'll do that. There was a sergeant first class. Just forgot his last name, but I'm going to catch it before the end. But he was a sergeant, and he came, Jeff Masters, sergeant first class Jeff Masters. We came down the airplane. It was Condi Rice's plane, and he was like all like saluting, and he's like so passionate about what he was doing. He was a plumber, and but was the prototype awesome military-looking guy, so they had him like do all the pomp and circumstance. And then while we were there, we saw him get all these awards. They're like, Sergeant First Class Masters, he was getting all these awards from these generals, and I was like, dang, I want that guy to work for me. So I hired him. So he finished his tour duty, hired him, gave him the hardest project we had at the time, and he killed it. He nailed it. And then he ended up going to school, and he became a director, and now he's like a principal consultant for some big firm now, because it's about passion. And so that's what I look for, is like passion. I always want to make sure I'm passionate about something, whether it's dance or whatever. I want to be all about passion. So I thought I was a pretty decent leader, because when I moved to Texas, I think my passion was infectious, and 2 people from Cleveland moved to Texas, followed me, came with me. I was like, dang, that's pretty good, right? You have that sort of influence on someone. But I met someone way better. So her name's Pam. She's from Sutter. And I met her, I was teaching the CIO boot camp, and I met her. She was like the star of that particular class. She was so passionate. She even drew me into her. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to hang out with this person. She's so passionate about healthcare and about technology. And so I hired her. So she's my number 2 in New York City. You know how many people moved from California to New York City? 20. So challenge yourself. How many people would follow you? That's how I challenged myself. I said, she raised the bar for me. I said to myself, I've done deep introspection on this question. How many people would move their families, would move across the country for you? That'll tell you if you have passion or not. It's like, oh my gosh, I got a long ways to go. So passion's really key for anything in life. And so if you don't have something, find something. And again, it doesn't matter what it is. Just find something, and it'll change your life. It really will, and it'll change who you are in the professional environment as well. So perseverance. So I think one of the reasons that extraordinary things have happened to me in my career, my personal life, is just because I outlasted other people. Right? People are lazy. Not everybody, but a lot of people are lazy. And so you just hang in there. So I started doing I like to do Ironman races. Ironman races are pretty long races. And so my last time I did Ironman was a year ago in Boulder. And if you were to look at the statistics, I was the bottom 25% coming out of the water, because I'm a horrible swimmer. And so I'm the last 25% coming out of the water. But I ended up in the top 25% at the end of the day. It's not because I'm a faster runner. It's not because I'm a faster biker. I'm telling you, it's just because I hung in there. I had the vision, I had the passion. I'm like, I'm not going to slow down, get lazy on myself because I've trained for this. Just stick with it, just persevere. And I've had some amazing things happen because of perseverance. And I think that way in my career too, because I was the one who, when they said, hey, who wants to present? No one wants to present and talk in front of your peers. Who can talk about, ITSM or whatever? It's like, okay, I'll do it. I just always volunteered and always did more than anyone else was willing to do. And that got me noticed. And I look for that too in my staffs. Who can do, today, I was preparing, I was rehearsing this morning in my hotel room. A reminder popped up. I have my staff meeting at 9 a.m. Eastern time every Thursday. And I forgot. Usually I'm really good about looking ahead in my calendar and saying, hey, who can lead this? Do we need to cancel it? What's the agenda? And I was like, oh my gosh, it's 8:45 there. And so I text my team. I was like, oh, they're like, oh, we got this already. I got it. I'll lead it. I got the agenda. I'll set up the call. That's the type of people that I like to recruit and affirm. And that's why you get extraordinary things with your teams and outcomes if you're surrounded by people like that. So people who persevere and are resilient. That's really key. This is Iron Man Sam. This is my inspiration for Iron Man. He's one of my former employees' children who was diagnosed with neuroblastoma. Thankfully, despite all odds, he's still alive and thriving. And he was like, they call him Iron Man. It had nothing to do with me, but he was like, Ed, would you do an Iron Man for me? And so eventually I did, and he was the benefactor of the medal and all that kind of stuff. But he's my model. So I always look for people like who can be my model for perseverance, because I think when I go through hard times, it's nothing like Iron Man Sam. And I know you have people in your life too that are persevering against very difficult things. I always use them as a model. I used my mom when she was still alive as a model as well. So the next thing is fail forward. So it's really critical that you learn from your mistakes. So I failed forward several times. So in the Army, I went from almost getting kicked out of basic training to I got once I was a combat medic, then I became a combat engineer officer. The engineering school you only get into with an engineering degree. It's the second most difficult school to get into in the military, first being aviation, second engineering. For some reason, who knows, I ended up getting into the School of Engineering. The first day they give you a test in math and science. And remember, I was a flunky. Math and engineering, I flunked it. And they're like, you got to go to a remedial program. So every night while everyone's going out partying and stuff, this was Top Gun era. Like we all thought we were these Top Gun, Tom Cruise type people. But I couldn't do anything, so I had to go to remedial classes. Well, they forgot to actually sign me up. And I didn't volunteer the fact that they didn't sign me up. So when I went to class every day, I was so engaged, sitting in the front, listening. And it's like, I don't want to be a failure because I almost got kicked out of the Army. And I told myself, Staff Sergeant Moultrie, he was my drill sergeant in 1982. And I told him, I said, I'm coming back after you. This was at graduation. I'm coming back after you, and I'm going to make you do push-ups because I was 17 years old. And so that was part of my motivation, becoming an officer, and I became an officer, and I wanted to go back. Obviously, I was older now, I was more mature, and I wanted to look them up just to say thank you for helping me. But I graduated top 10% of that class of engineers, and I was a psychology major who was a flunky. And I only tell you that story because I just wanted to learn to fail forward. I did that when I got fired. I got fired in my first job. Man, I could have been depressed, but I said, no. I'm going to use this as a catalyst to get better, to improve myself, and to go forward. And I'll still get fired because I take a lot of risk and I push my organizations. So I expect to get fired anytime, especially in New York City because the newspapers, they always come up with great stories about me. They covered me already. They covered my wife. They don't even know my wife, but they talk about my wife. So it's very interesting. So I expect to be fired again someday, but for good reasons, for pushing my organizations forward. So another thing is wonderment and continuous learning. So always learn. What are you doing to challenge yourself to learn? And in your life, do you just sit back or are you really pushing yourself to learn? I love Disney. I learned from Disney. Let me show you a quick picture of Disney. So the reason I took these photos is when my oldest daughter was again, probably 5, 6, 7, we went to Disney and she got all these pictures with princesses. And so one day, this was about 2 years ago, I was in Disney and I remember those times with my daughter and I said, wouldn't it be funny to take a picture now with Disney princesses and text them to my daughter? So I did, but the awkward thing was, these lines, they have these long lines and all these adults are there with their little kids, right? And here I am, I felt so creepy. I felt dirty. I was like, Wow, so what I did, though, so I wouldn't feel so bad, is I kind of got close to some of the kids, like almost like they were mine. I'd be like, so no one would think, hey, who's that creepy guy standing by himself with all the kids around him? So and then when it was my turn, and actually I had another guy friend with me, when it was my turn, I like ran up to the princesses, and I wanted to get this over with quick. I was so embarrassed. And what they did, they each held on to me. I found this interesting. So you learn every place. And this was really interesting, and it really affected me as a leader, both in my home and at work. Because for them, they're trained this way. They didn't let me go because they're trained to have a moment with me. They have a moment with every kid. That's why it takes so long to get through that line. They have to have a moment. So I was like, picture, gone. And both, well, I did it like, I have like 7 of them now. Every time they held me back. And then they asked me a question, and they looked me in the eye, and they connected with me. And here I am telling you all the story about Disney princesses. But it changed me a little bit in the workplace. So I give that moment. Remember, I talked about walking through the crowd slowly, and you know, when you go to the bathroom or wherever, is talk to people and spend time with people. So I look everyone in the eye. And I didn't do that before. I would kind of look over them or whatever, but I look them in the eye. And you get that connection with people, and people believe that you really care about them, because I do. And by looking them in the eye, it really conveyed that. So you can learn everywhere. I'm always trying to learn. I got a PhD, I believe, from listening to books on tape or on CD in my car. I spent a lot of time in my car. I always had book stuff. I have no TV. We grew up without TVs. We don't have TVs in our home. And so we're always like just kind of learning, reading or what have you. Okay, so another one's work your ass off. And so these were a lot of the awards that my former organization won, and they won it. So you get external validation for what you're actually doing internally. They won all these amazing awards. This is just, we used to have 2 pages, but just for the sake of brevity, I just tried to get it down, just left a few off and get it down to 1. But they won all these amazing awards as a team. And it's because they worked their ass off. That's what I was trying to say. So I would say, how many of us, you know, have deep introspection as we talk about these different principles? Like, do you really? I mean, challenge yourself. But I'm talking personal relationships as well. How hard do you work on your personal relationships? Because they're hard. So I'm like, I work hard on it. I try to improve myself, all that kind of stuff. But also in the workplace, it's like you got to work your butt off. And so people say, oh, hey, I wish I had this experience. I wish I had that, or I wish I had that time. So I got to swim across, I did escape from Alcatraz, swam across San Francisco Bay a few times. And people's like, I wish I could do that. I said, you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. But I've decided to work my butt off in that particular area to qualify and to go. And that's all you need to do, too. So it's not like there's any special privilege. It's just sometimes it's working hard. And, you know, people never see these sort of scenes where they're pricking you with, they're doing all sorts of tests on you, and every minute while you're running, and they try to get your heart rate really high. There's someone taking your blood and doing all this analysis, and you do all that stuff behind the scenes. No one knows. When they hear your stories, they're like, oh, I'd like to run a marathon or to be like Chuck and run almost every major marathon in the world. And but no one knows that Chuck gets up early in the morning or does 20-mile runs. You know, but that's what it takes to be successful. And so that's what you have to do. And I just always remind people about that. So in terms of working your butt off, you know, that's really the key. So I wanted to tell you one other story at this point, and then we'll finish up with the last 2. So one of the coolest honors I had in my life is, so I take my duathlons, run, bike, run, fairly serious. It's one of my passions that I spoke about, and it gives me a great outlet, you know, because you get frustrated at work, and you need to do something outside of work and be passionate about. And so I started doing these duathlons, and I think I did a triathlon or duathlon where there weren't very many people there, and as a result, I ended up in the top 10 of my age group. And so a few months later, I got this email from the triathlon governing body. They said, congratulations. Because of your performance, you know, you're invited, you qualified for the national championships. And I was like, the only reason they would want me there so they can have that picture of that last person barely making it across the line and everyone else looking fast and awesome, and you're the sort of the riffraff in the background. And I was like, I'm not going, you know, there's no way, I wouldn't stand a chance. And then I thought a little bit about it. A couple days later, I was like, wow, I'll never get invited again, because it's probably a fluke that I was top 10 in that last race. And I'll never get invited again, so why not go and enjoy the experience? But I was so self-conscious in my identity, and I was so weak in my identity and who I was, and I went there, and I was, you know, if you've seen these athletes, they have 0% body fat, and I've got like 18% sitting right here, and and you wear these tight uniforms, and there's no, I'm gonna go to the race. Who's gonna know? No one really cares. So I had all this negative self-talk, but then it takes me a while, but I finally because all the other principles coming together, I'm like, no, I'm gonna do this. It's a privilege to be here. It's an honor. I'm gonna do it. And so I said, and I'm a pretty competitive person. So I went out there and I ran faster than I ever ran before, and I did get a new bike, so that bike really helped. But I got a new bike, and I was faster on the bike, and I was fast on the run, and it's like, okay, I just don't want to be last. I just don't want to be last. And so the top 18 people make Team USA. And so I was looking, going down the list, 15, 16, 17, 18, Edward Marx. I was like, what? How is that possible? I'm fat. I beat those skinny guys. It's like, are you guys sure? It's like, yeah. And so I made Team USA. Now, realize I'm a first-generation American. And the United States was very good to my family, and very good to my dad in particular. And so after he wore, the Red Cross brought him to the United States. He came through New York City and drafted him then. But my dad had a great career, and the country was great. And so I've always been a super patriot. I was like, I always wanted to be on the Olympics, when I was younger, and I was never going to make the Olympics. But here's my chance to race for Team USA at the World Championships. So I got a coach. I was like, I better get a coach, and I probably should lose a couple pounds, but I didn't. So I look still funny in the uniform. But anyways, I went, and it was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get blown away on the world stage, because typically Europeans and Australians are much faster than American teams. So that I'm going to get blown away. It's going to be embarrassing, but I get to represent our country. So what happened is the race happened. It was a beautiful race venue in Spain, and I'm about a mile from the finish. And the finish is a lap inside the stadium. And so I'm running along, and I'm trying to persevere and live all the things I'm telling you I do. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do it. And so I see the coach, Team USA. He's Marx. And so now I'm about a half mile out. I'm about to enter the stadium. And he has an American flag. So it was so cool to grab that flag, racing for your country on the world stage. And so I get into the stadium, and he told me one thing when I grabbed the flag. He said, pass 2 people. And I didn't know what he's talking about except for just motivation. So I was like, damn, I passed 3. And I got in that stadium. There's so many Americans and other people that are favorable to our country. They saw the flag. They started, USA. And I was like, I was crying. I didn't get to the finish line. I was crying. I was like, wow, I'm representing our country, doing something I'm passionate about. Across the finish line, just like a mess. And I ended up being top 25 in the world. And again, I'm telling you, from a physical view, from my times, my data, I'm average. But when you do things and you have the vision for it and the passion for it and the perseverance in deep ways, and you take the risks, stuff happens. And that was like the most glorious moment one of the most glorious moments for me. And it can be the same. It can be the same at a professional level. I give you examples on the professional side too, but I think you get where I'm going with this. And volunteering is really important. So every Christmas, we do Santa. We dress as elves. We're with Santa Claus delivering presents at our hospitals. Whatever it is for you, it shouldn't be a one-time-a-year event, but for us, this is the main one that we love the most. So whatever it is for you, do volunteer until it hurts. Because everyone volunteers. I gotta go soup kitchen on Thanksgiving, or I'll do something like this on Christmas. That doesn't hurt. Do things till they hurt. And again, I can tell you stories about orphanages that we have, or the clinic. It hurt, some ways to do some of those things and to give, but it changed us and transformed us. And we do the same in the workplace as well. And then, so identity is really critical. And so part of my family's Indian, so my part of my identity is in the Indian culture. But most of us operate in shame. Most of us, if we're honest with ourselves, operate in shame. Because that's the way, you may have been raised that way. I was raised that way. My parents were good people, but they didn't know any better. And they're like, oh, you can do better than that. Oh, your brother did that. Oh, you only scored 2 goals? Oh, you're not a captain yet in the Army? they didn't mean it in a bad way, but there's sort of things they say, and so we operate in shame. I've had a lot of success through shame. Shame has been a big driver. I found my identity in recognition. I found my identity in people who I hung out with, in name dropping or whatever. I found my identity in all the wrong things. And it wasn't until recently I finally I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm getting closer. It's like, who am I? That's why I told you I had 4 S's. That's who I am. And I know who I am. I know what I'm made for. I know my vision. I know why I'm here on earth. And so I have that confidence now. And I have better identity when I go out and race. It's not about my body weight or anything like that. I'm not racing for them. I'm racing for something else. So, and it's hard to keep that in the workplace too. It's like, don't shame your employees. I was shaming my employees. And I don't mean this in a bad way. It's not the traditional ways that you think of, but I would operate with shame. Like, hey, what, we're down again? Or, I would think about it. I don't want to get too deep because I need to wrap up, but oftentimes we operate in shame, but not in identity. So spend a lot of time thinking about who are you and what do you stand for. Sometimes one of my heroes, not heroes, but my favorite group is U2, and there's this guy called The Edge, and so even my grandson wants to look like The Edge. So I already talked enough about physical fitness. I just think it's so important for mental acuity. That's why the Army stresses it so much. And then finally, do everything you do in excellence. I got to carry the Olympic torch, and because of some of the stuff, some of the duathlon, Team USA stuff, won some other awards because of my great teams that I've been a part of. But you do everything with excellence. And so, Chuck, I need to ask the embarrassing question. Is that how much? I'm down to like 2 minutes, right? 4 minutes, okay. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. But if you do everything with excellence, amazing things happen. And so I could tell you a story. And again, I am not telling you this out of pride or arrogance. I'm just telling you because this real stuff happens. I was asked to go do some speaking in Saudi Arabia earlier, like 2 months ago. So I go there. I end up meeting. So they hear me speak, and suddenly I'm meeting with the guy who's responsible for all of healthcare in the country, and he's asking me. He's like, "All right, Ed, what would you do if you were me? What strategies do I need to deploy that'll leapfrog the West? We don't want to repeat what the West has done, but we want to build off of that. So what would you do?" I was like, and literally I'm thinking to myself, what the hell? What? You're talking to the wrong person. But I'm thinking, wow, what a privilege, what an honor. I had the same thing with the Deputy Secretary of Health in China. So I got invited over to China, I don't know, a year and a half ago. And I said, I was kind of playing with them. I was like, okay, well, if you take me to the top 10 things in China, then I'll be happy to go. And sure enough, they did. So they flew me around, and they gave me a private tour of everything. Everything you can imagine in China, I got the ability to see. And I'm sitting across from, he's the Deputy Secretary of Health. And I'm like, wow. And again, I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is really crazy. How on earth did it happen? It happened not because I had this like political whatever backing. It just happened because all the things that I've been talking about. And it can happen to anybody in this room by living deep principles. And so it's amazing. And I could tell you some more stories, but again, because of time, and then I don't want you to think that I'm just being arrogant. Things happen, and you do things with excellence. You outshine other people. You last longer than them. You do it with excellence, and it speaks for itself. And so you have to have a very high bar in terms of excellence. So I think this is the last slide. So the final thing is reflection. How often do you spend quiet time reflecting about anything during the day? Like, that's a nice thing about mountain climbing. You have a lot of downtime. This is base camp in Russia. You can tell by the color of the tubes there. You get a lot of downtime, but we don't always get that downtime in the workplace, right? Or our family lives are so busy and work so busy. You don't get a lot of downtime to reflect. But if you don't reflect, you are missing out, because it's proven scientifically that you need. It's like when you studied, when you're in college or whatever. When you have time to reflect and think on things, it goes into your memory, becomes part of who you are. If you're just whizzing through life, checking one box after another, none of these things ever really get incorporated or grafted or become part of your DNA. So I always challenge people, say, how many minutes a day? And people laugh, right? Because if they got a couple minutes a month, they'd be happy to really reflect. So I try to do that every day. Usually the best times is in the morning when I'm working out, or like between sessions of working out, what have you. I just sit there and think about, wow, the day ahead, the day yesterday, about, wow, am I living true to myself? Am I living true to my identity? What's going on? How can I serve others? What can I do? How can I improve? Who can I help? I just try and think of all those things daily. Just take 5 minutes. Even if you have 5 minutes for mindfulness or whatever the current buzzword is for it, just reflect and deeply, and you'll see transformation happen in your life. So I'll just end. I was, like I told you already, let's see if I get that last slide so you have my contact. I can't tell you emphatically enough how average I was. And when I was flunking out of school and I was a drunk in college, and I was at the lowest points of my life, and I was like, I had all these dreams and aspirations, but I was like, that'll never happen to me. I had no money, nothing. I was near as destitute as I knew life could be for myself. And I was at the rock bottom. And I had all these dreams and stuff. It's like, nothing can ever happen in my life because look at my background and look what I've done to myself to this point. And there's no hope. But there is hope, and that's the message. Again, I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm just one of you. I'm just like you. I have the same type of job. We work in the same industry. That's my full-time living. But I know that there's hope. And if I, thanks to my teams and family, have achieved some of the things I've talked about in the stories, and I have a book that talks about more of them, and more are happening today, so I don't live in the past, the same thing can happen to you. So family, professional, career, whatever, you can experience extraordinary tales on a monthly basis, not a one-time event. It just becomes part of your lifestyle by living deep principles and understanding who you are and your identity. So thank you so much again for having me, Chuck, and it's been an honor. And